I almost didn't open the envelope. It arrived on a Wednesday morning between a utility bill and a catering supply catalog, cream-colored with my name written in that familiar slanted handwriting I had spent 2 years trying to forget. I stood at my kitchen counter holding it for a long moment before setting it down and making coffee first. Some things deserve caffeine before you face them. My name is Camille Adeyemi. I am 34 years old and I own a mid-sized event venue called the Harlow House on the east side of Atlanta. It seats 280 guests, has a courtyard strung with permanent lights, and a catering kitchen I renovated myself over 3 weekends with help from my best friend and a YouTube tutorial that was longer than most films. I built it from an empty commercial property I purchased at 29 with every dollar I had saved since I was 23. I built it 14 months after a man named Preston Cole left me for someone he described as less complicated. I opened the envelope on my second cup of coffee. The invitation was expensive. Heavy cardstock with gold foil lettering and a small ribbon detail on the left corner. Preston had always believed that the quality of an object said something important about the person presenting it. He spent money on surfaces the way some people spend money on foundations. It read, "You are warmly invited to celebrate the engagement of Preston Cole and Dominique Farrow." The venue was listed at the bottom in elegant italics. The Harlow House, East Atlanta. I read that line 3 times. Then I sat down slowly on the kitchen stool because my legs made a quiet decision without consulting me first. Preston had booked my venue for his engagement party. Either he did not know I owned it, which seemed impossible given how small our shared social circle was. Or he knew exactly and had done it deliberately, which said something about him that even I had underestimated. I pulled up my booking system on my phone. There it was. Cole Farrow Engagement Celebration. Booked 6 weeks earlier through my events coordinator, a deposit already paid, full guest list pending. I set my phone face down on the counter. Then I picked up my coffee and finished it slowly while I decided what kind of woman I was going to be about this. Preston and I dated for 2 years and 4 months. I kept track not because I am sentimental but because the timeline matters when you are trying to understand how a person can be completely wrong about someone they knew that well. We met at a fundraising dinner when I was 27 and still working as an events manager for a hotel downtown. He was charming in the specific way that well-dressed men with good vocabularies can be charming when they decide to focus their attention on you. He asked thoughtful questions. He remembered small details. He made you feel like the most interesting person in the room. What I understood later was that he performed interest the way some actors perform emotion. Convincingly enough to move the scene forward without anything real underneath. The relationship ended on a Sunday evening in my old apartment. No shouting. No dramatic confrontation. Preston sat across from me on the couch and explained in careful, reasonable language that he needed someone who matched his social ambitions more naturally. Someone whose goals aligned with the life he was building. He used the phrase "less complicated" twice. I did not cry until he left. Then I cried for 3 days. Then I got up and bought an empty commercial building on the east side of Atlanta and started building something that had nothing to do with him. I called my events coordinator, a calm and capable woman named Zosha Brandt, the morning after the invitation arrived. Zosha had been with me since the Harlow House opened and had the particular skill of handling complicated situations without adding drama to them. "The Cole Farrow booking," I said when she picked up. "Tell me everything about how it came in." Zosha pulled up the file. The booking had been made by Dominique Farrow directly, she explained. Dominique had called the venue line, requested a tour from our junior coordinator while Zosha was traveling, loved the courtyard, and paid the deposit the same afternoon. "Did she give a full guest list?" I asked. "Not yet. She said she'd send it by the end of the month." I asked Zosha to send me the complete booking contract. I read it twice that evening. Everything was standard. Nothing unusual except the name at the top of the page and the particular feeling it produced in the middle of my chest. I thought about canceling the booking. I had reasonable grounds. The contract had a venue discretion clause for situations involving conflict of interest. I sat with that option for 1 full evening. Then I decided against it. Not because I wanted to attend my ex's engagement party, but because canceling felt like flinching. And I had not built the Harlow House by flinching at hard things. I would honor the booking. I would simply do it as the owner. I spent 3 days deciding whether Preston knew. By the end of those 3 days I had concluded that it did not actually matter. If he didn't know, the situation would reveal itself naturally and I would handle it with grace. If he did know and had chosen my venue deliberately, then he had made a significant miscalculation about the kind of woman I had become in the 4 years since he left. Either way, the answer was the same. I would do my job with complete professionalism, and I would do it better than anyone else in Atlanta could have done it. I pulled up the event details and reviewed everything with fresh eyes. 140 guests. A cocktail hour in the courtyard followed by dinner in the main hall. A live quartet for background music. A dessert table instead of a traditional cake. Dominique had good taste, I noted without particular emotion. The design selections were clean and considered. I began building the event plan personally rather than delegating it to my coordinator as I normally would for a booking this size. I sourced better floral arrangements than the budget required and upgraded the lighting rig in the main hall at my own cost. If Preston Cole was going to celebrate his engagement at my venue, it was going to be the most beautiful event he had ever attended. Because it was my house. And I ran it without apology. The first contact came 2 weeks before the event. Dominique Farrow called the venue directly to discuss final arrangements. I let Bola handle the initial conversation and listened to the recorded summary afterward as I normally did for major bookings. Dominique sounded organized and pleasant. She had clear preferences and communicated them without being difficult. She wanted the courtyard lights at 70% warmth rather than full brightness. She wanted the quartet position near the east entrance rather than center stage. She had dietary notes for 11 guests and wanted them handled discreetly. Reasonable requests. All of them easy. Then at the end of the call she mentioned that her fiancé had a specific request about the event coordinator. He had asked that the venue manager not be overly present during the evening. He preferred a more behind-the-scenes approach from staff. Bola had noted this without comment. I read that line twice. Then I understood with complete certainty that Preston knew exactly whose venue he had booked. That request had nothing to do with preference and everything to do with expectation. He expected me to disappear into the background of my own building on his most important evening. He had built this scenario carefully. He wanted me present enough to witness his happiness and invisible enough to feel the full weight of it. I closed the file and smiled for the first time since the invitation arrived. He had no idea what Friday was going to look like. I called my oldest friend, Zara Obi, that same evening. Zara had known me since university and had the particular gift of listening completely before saying anything. I told her everything from the beginning. The invitation, the booking, Dominique's call, and the request about the venue manager staying in the background. Zara was quiet for a full 4 seconds after I finished. That was long for her. He booked your venue, she said slowly, knowing it was yours, and then asked you to be invisible in it. That's my reading, I said. Another pause. What are you going to do? My job, I said. Perfectly. Zara made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and disbelief. Camille. That's it? That's the whole plan? That's the whole plan, I said. She was quiet again. Then she understood. I could hear it in the way her breathing changed slightly. You're not going to fight him, she said. You're just going to make him stand in the middle of everything you built and understand exactly what he walked away from. I'm going to throw the best event this city has seen this year, I said. Everything else will take care of itself. Zara laughed then. A full, genuine sound. I want to be there, she said. You're already on the guest list, I told her. I added you this morning as my personal guest and venue host representative. The week before the event I threw myself into the details with the focused energy I usually reserved for our largest corporate bookings. I personally contacted the floral supplier and upgraded the centerpiece arrangements to something significantly more dramatic than the package Dominique had selected. I absorbed the cost difference myself and noted it as a venue investment. I had the main hall repainted in a warmer tone that I had been considering for months but never prioritized. I refinished the wood panels along the east wall. I had the courtyard stone cleaned and resealed so it caught the lights differently at night. Bola watched all of this with the quiet attention of someone connecting dots she was too professional to comment on directly. On Thursday, the day before the event, she appeared in my office doorway with her tablet and a careful expression. Everything is ready, she said. This might be the best the venue has ever looked. Good, I said. She hesitated. Camille. Are you okay? I looked around my office. The framed photo of the building on its first day. The original floor plan I had sketched on the back of a receipt. The small potted plant my mother had brought when I signed the deed. I'm better than okay, I said honestly. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Bola nodded slowly. What time are you arriving tomorrow? Early, I said. It's my house. I arrived at the Harlow house at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning, 4 hours before the event setup crew. I walked through every room alone in the early quiet the way I always did before a major event. It was a habit I had started on our very first booking 3 years earlier and never stopped. I walked the courtyard first. The stones were clean and pale in the morning light. The permanent lights above were off, but the rigging was perfect, every bulb positioned exactly where I had placed it during the original installation. I had climbed that ladder myself on a Saturday in November, 3 months after opening, because the contractor's positioning was 2 degrees off from what I had imagined. I walked the main hall next. The new wall tone was exactly right. Warmer than before, the kind of color that makes people look their best under evening light. The floral arrangements were arriving at 10 a.m. and I had already approved the final designs twice. I stood in the center of the hall for a long moment. 4 years ago I had stood in this same spot when it was an empty commercial shell with water damage on the ceiling and missing floor panels near the west wall. I had turned slowly in a full circle that day, trying to see past what it was toward what it could become. I did the same turn now. The difference between those 2 moments lived in my chest like something permanent. Guests began arriving at 6 p.m. I stationed myself in the venue management suite, a small room off the main corridor with a full view of both the courtyard entrance and the main hall through discreet interior windows. From there I could see everything without being the first thing anyone noticed when they walked in. Preston arrived at 6:14 p.m. I watched him come through the courtyard entrance with Dominique on his arm. She was tall and elegant in a deep green dress with her hair pinned up simply. She looked genuinely happy in the uncomplicated way of someone who had no idea there was any other layer to the evening. Preston looked exactly as I remembered him. Same careful posture. Same way of scanning a room the moment he entered it, taking inventory of who was present and how things reflected on him. He looked around the courtyard with an expression that shifted almost immediately from casual confidence to something quieter. The venue stopped him. I watched it happen in real time. His eyes moved across the lights, the flowers, the refinished stone, the warmth of everything. He had expected to walk into a space he could feel superior to. He had expected something competent and ordinary. He had not expected this. I watched him lean toward Dominique and say something. She smiled and nodded. He looked around the courtyard one more time with an expression I recognized from years of knowing his face. He was recalculating. I gave it 40 minutes before I walked out. Not to make an entrance. I was not interested in theater. I had a legitimate reason to move through the space because that was my job in my building and I had never needed anyone's permission to walk through my own door. I wore what I always wore when I worked a premium event. A clean black dress, simple and well cut, with my Harlow House lanyard tucked into my pocket rather than hanging visibly. Professional without being invisible. Present without performing. The courtyard was full and warm. The quartet was playing something low and melodic near the east entrance exactly where Dominique had requested. The lighting was at 70% warmth. Everything was exactly as ordered and more beautiful than the order had anticipated. I moved through the space checking in with my floor staff, straightening one centerpiece that had shifted slightly, exchanging a quiet word with the catering lead about the timing for the first service course. I was doing my job. Just my job. I felt him notice me before I saw him. That particular shift in the air that happens when someone who knows you well suddenly becomes aware of your presence across a crowded room. I turned naturally as part of my room scan and met Preston's eyes across 40 guests and a decade of distance. His expression moved through 3 things in under 2 seconds. Recognition. Confusion. Then something I could not fully name but had been waiting 4 years to see. He crossed the room in the way Preston always moved through spaces he wanted to control. Purposeful and unhurried, as if the path cleared itself for him rather than the other way around. He stopped 2 feet from me with a glass of champagne in his hand and a smile that had not quite decided what it wanted to be. "Camille," he said. "I wasn't sure you'd be here personally." "I'm here personally for all our premium events," I said pleasantly. "It's part of how we maintain our standard." He glanced around the courtyard. The smile settled into something more genuine and less comfortable. "This place is remarkable," he said. "I had no idea it had become this." "4 years of work," I said simply. He nodded slowly. Something was moving behind his eyes that he was working to keep off his face. You built all of this yourself? Every detail, I said. A pause opened between us. Around us the party continued warmly. Glasses clinking. The quartet moving into something slightly livelier. Dominique laughing with a group near the floral display I had upgraded at my own expense. Camille, Preston said quietly. His voice had dropped below the party noise so only I could hear it. The practiced confidence had gone somewhere. What replaced it was something rawer. This is genuinely extraordinary. I mean that. I looked at him steadily. I know you do, I said. Thank you for choosing the Harlow house. Then I smiled professionally and moved on to check the main hall. The dinner service ran perfectly. Every course arrived on time. The dietary requirements were handled so discreetly that the 11 guests with specific needs never had a moment of awkwardness. The quartet transitioned seamlessly from background music to a slightly fuller sound during the dessert course exactly as I had planned with them during Thursday's rehearsal. Zara found me near the catering corridor during the main course. She was wearing a deep burgundy dress and the expression of someone thoroughly enjoying an evening on multiple levels simultaneously. He keeps looking at you, she said quietly. He's looking at the venue, I said. Camille. She gave me a patient look. He's looking at you. I handed her a glass of water from the passing tray and said nothing. What I did not tell Zara was that I had noticed it too. Preston's attention kept returning to me throughout the evening with the quality of a person trying to solve a problem that kept rearranging itself. He was watching me move through my own space. Watching my staff respond to me. Watching guests speak to me with the particular warmth that people reserve for someone who has made them feel genuinely welcomed. He had come here expecting to show me something. Instead I had shown him something he had not prepared for. Not heartbreak. Not bitterness. Not the less complicated woman he had decided I should have remained. Just Camille Adeyemi. Running her house. Completely at home in everything she had built without him. The formal part of the evening ended at 10 p.m. with a toast from Preston's older brother that was warm and genuinely funny. Dominique cried a little and pressed her face against Preston's shoulder in the uncomplicated way of someone completely secure in where she stood. I watched from the side of the room and felt something I had not expected to feel. Not jealousy. Not grief. Something quieter and more honest than either of those things. I felt glad. Not for Preston specifically. For the version of myself that had stopped waiting for his version of my life to become real and had gone and built something realer than anything he had ever offered me. Guests began filtering out slowly after the toast. I positioned myself near the courtyard exit the way I always did at the end of major events, thanking people as they left, making sure the departure felt as considered as the arrival. Dominique reached me before Preston did. She took both my hands in hers with the genuine warmth of someone who had no complicated history with anything in this building. This venue is the most beautiful place I have ever been to, she said. You have built something extraordinary here. Thank you, I said. Congratulations on your engagement. She squeezed my hands and moved toward the exit. Preston stopped in front of me last. The room was nearly empty. The quartet was packing their instruments. My staff moved quietly around us. He looked at me for a long moment without the performance he had arrived with. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. A real one. Not for tonight. For before. I looked at Preston Cole standing in the middle of my courtyard with the permanent lights warm above him and the honest expression of a man who had arrived expecting one evening and received a completely different one. I thought about what to say. Not the sharp version. Not the wounded version. Just the true one. I appreciate that, I said. Genuinely. He nodded slowly. You deserved better than how I left, he said. I told myself a story about who you were that made it easier to go. I was wrong about the story. I looked around the courtyard for a brief moment. The lights. The stone. The flowers still perfect at the end of a long evening. 4 years of early mornings and difficult decisions and moments of complete doubt that I had walked through anyway because the alternative was standing still. You weren't entirely wrong, I said honestly. I was less comfortable with your world back then. I just chose to build my own instead of shrinking into yours. Something moved across his face. Not regret exactly. Something more useful than regret. Recognition. He extended his hand. I shook it. Then he walked out of the Harlow house for the last time, and I stood in my courtyard listening to the quiet that follows a successful event. The particular satisfying silence of a space that had held something beautifully and was now resting. Zara appeared beside me. She looked up at the lights. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it honestly. "Complete," I said. She nodded like that was exactly the right word. I turned off the courtyard lights myself at midnight, the way I always did after the last guest left. My hand on my own switch, in my own house, at the end of an evening that had belonged entirely to me. Preston had invited me to watch him move forward. He had not understood that I had already been moving for 4 years. I locked the door and went home.